afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of ADMH, Adoption of Digital Marketing in Healthcare, a community in healthcare and wellness sector, I, Chandan Anand, Vice President of Innosaf Group and ADMH, welcome you all. ADMH presents Digital Health Conclave 2021 on the topic Reinventing Healthcare Marketing in the Digital Age, Innovations for the Post-Pandemic Era. We thank our partners who supported us in our cause, Digital Partner Innosaf Digital, Academia Partner ASMA, AI Partner Purai Robotics. We feel privileged and glad to host such an event. I would like to drive your kind attention towards the new initiatives which has been taken under ADMH. ADMH is an emerging and leading community in healthcare and academy and wellness sector, with an outreach of over 50,000 industry stakeholders and 15,000 doctors. As health and holistic well-being take the center stage of our lives, healthcare marketing has also grown in importance as the sector rapidly evolves and explores the opportunities in the world where the power of digital technologies plays an integral role for driving growth and business success. ADMH is creating knowledge sharing platform and networking platform via webinars, virtual events, and who is who from the industry, creating opportunities of collaborations between the corporate, government, and healthcare stakeholders. ADMH community ecosystem comprises of stakeholders from the healthcare industry, including doctors, healthcare practitioners and marketeers, pharmaceutical companies, hospital administrators, government regulatory bodies, health tech companies, solution providers, and startups. ADMH community is trying to build this knowledge sharing platform with these special initiatives. So it was a brief about what ADMH does. The deliberation today will take a deep dive and deep talks with the experts' comments over the theme, Reinventing Healthcare Marketing and Digital Age, Innovations for the Post-Pandemic Era. Today's deliberation will delve into the details of how technology and recent developments have emerged to ease out the marketing operations. Building a telehealth framework for digital marketing outreach and the importance of investing in technology for agility and efficient transition into the digital future. With us today are the eminent speakers and experts from the healthcare industry who will enlighten us by sharing their experiences, opinion, and thought-provoking talks. We are glad to have your participation as listeners, attendees, speakers, and partners. Keep the interaction and engagement on by asking relevant questions to the speakers over the chat box, and we'll assure that we'll pick most of them and try to answer them during this session. So let us hear them and enjoy this informative and interesting session. With this, may I please invite my colleague Ved Prasad Thakre to kindly introduce our eminent speakers of this panel. Ved. Please unmute, Ved. Ved, please unmute yourself.
Sorry. So good afternoon to one and all. I am Ved Prasad Thakre, heading ADMH community. It's my privilege that today I am here a part of the event. So for today, as a participants, speakers with us, we have Dr. K. Madan Gopal, Senior Consultant, Niti Aayog. Welcome, sir. Mr. V.S. Bedi, COO, Telemedicine Society of India. Welcome, sir.
Welcome, Bedi.
Mr. Shubhajit Majumdar, Director Strategic Growth, Microsoft India. Welcome, sir.
Welcome, Majumdar.
Dr. Deepak Patkar, Director Medical Services, Nanavati Max Super Specialty Hospital, Mumbai. We welcome you, sir.
Welcome, Dr. Patkar.
Mr. Jashanjit Singh, COO, Lokmanya Hospital, and he is also the moderator for today's session. We welcome you, Jashanjit Singh, sir. And here, over to you, Jashanjit Singh, sir.
Can I have the main screen back?
Yes, you're audible.
No, can I have the main screen back? The home screen? I need to see the faces of the panelists. Yeah, thanks. So good afternoon, everyone. I hope we've taken out our time from our busy schedules to an important session. In fact, couple of sessions. So this being the panel one, the whole idea is to share your expertise and experience with regards to the subject we are covering. And this is more about based upon telemedicine, data analytics, AI, and the utilization in the healthcare scenario and leveraging it to the benefit of the masses. So I have a set of questions. I'll just briefly introduce what we plan to do. One question will be directed to each individual, which will be the primary question for that individual. And we would want you to share your expertise on that. And others can chip in once the individual has finished. And one question we'll leave it as an open panel question where everyone would get a chance to share their expertise. So I'm sharing starting the session with Dr. K. Madan Gopal. Good afternoon, sir. I start the question with you. The question reads, how can telemedicine be leveraged in today's healthcare scenario? And I want you to emphasize on the public space. How does government plan to promote it with an emphasis on marketing it and reaching out to the masses? Over to you, sir.
Jashanjit ji, it's a very, very nice question. If you look at why are you showing this here?
Yeah, let it be the homepage.
Yes, this is fine. So that I know that whom I am speaking. So this is a very pertinent question. You recall that during the pandemic, when we started during last year, when there was complete lockdown from the month of March onwards. So there was a question that, and most of the hospitals, they have shut down their operations. They were not treating the non-COVID care. So there was a question grappling in front of everybody because we are the capital of diabetes. We are now seeing the incidence of non-communicable diseases. So there are a lot of patients with diabetes, hypertension, how to take care of them. Because most of the hospitals, they were converted into COVID care and non-COVID care was more or less non-existent during that lockdown time. And apart from that, there was a lot of fear among the medical community as well, how to deal with this kind of thing. Looking at the need for providing a non-hospital based care. So we thought that there should be some enabling guidelines before the release of the guidelines by the Board of Governors of MCI. All the teleconsultation, everything, they were under scrutiny and more or less the courts have given a lot of orders against the teleconsultations and other things. That was the dampening factor. Having said this, this was an opportunity to see that how we can expedite the implementation of this and release of this guideline so that whatever care is provided to these people, that becomes a legal, that has a legal sanctity to this. With this background, work started for evolving the guidelines, and the guidelines are released as a part of this. The moment the guidelines were released, I think the whole market of more than 60,000 crore was open for telemedicine. It's more than that, but at that time it was so that we have opened a market of 60,000 crore rupees for the telemedicine. It's not restricting to only just the non-COVID care. Now you have seen that how beautifully we have managed, because it was a part of necessity or it was a part of compulsion. We can't say. But what we have observed that if we are taking care of the COVID patients, for 100 COVID patients, at least 80% of the cases can be managed at home. Whether it was overwhelmingness of the health facilities or it was overwhelmingness of other factors. But the people who can be managed in the hospital, who were supposed to be managed at the hospital, they were pushed into the home care. But this telemedicine, they had come very handy. You might have seen that a lot of telemedicine networks have come up. The government is having a e-Sanjeevani network. Telemedicine Society, they do have their network. But the main challenge is that they have all done their job. But how to the main challenge which I am seeing is that how to bring in the continuity of the service. During this, it's very saddened experience, but I would just like to flag it to you and this panel, saying that during the COVID time, lot of telemedicine, teleconsultation, that kind of advisory has happened. The moment the patient conditions deteriorated, the patient was asked to go to the hospital without telling where to go. It was left to the other people to at least arrange a hospital for him. That kind of referral mechanism is lacking today. That's another thing, another aspect I think in the coming discussion will come. But telemedicine, it has paved the way in one form or another form. It was already there, but the release of the telemedicine guidelines during the last year, taking advantage of the pandemic situation, it has paved a way for a network of telemedicine. Now you are having a lot of telemedicine providers. Now the next step, as a next step, what we are seeing is how to aggregate all these network providers, telemedicine providers. We have been pushing people to have a network of all the telemedicine providers, so that the person who is in require of a cardiology kind of consultation, he would be referred to that network. If a pediatric consultation is required, that it cannot be jack of all and master of none. So you have to have now specialized, because most of the people, they come up with the specialized kind of network. Now you have to see that how they come together and provide 24/7 services to all the people, irrespective of the areas. And that kind of model is to evolve. Second thing is what kind of standards we are, what kind of consultation we are doing through the telemedicine network. That's very, very important thing which has come up during this COVID times. It's just not just calling that, how are you feeling suicidal, how are you feeling this? No, we have to go beyond that. We have to standardize advisories provided through the telemedicine network. We have to standardize the people who are, you have to build capacities of the people who are providing this telemedicine services. We have to see that the telemedicine becomes a part and parcel of this, with the domiciliary care seeing a rise in the coming years. This is going to stay, and this is having a lot of potential in the coming years. We have to see that how we leverage on that, build a network of this telemedicine platform, and see that how we take it to the next level with the standardized and quality of telemedicine consultations. That's over to you. Now you can, other of my panelists can add. You're mute, Jashanjit ji, you're mute.
Yeah, is the government of India having any specific plans to reach out to the masses through itself, or it will be through private players?
No, you have seen that I have mentioned that we have having a e-Sanjeevani. It is through consultation to the public sector. Now we have to see that how we reaches to the other masses. It has already having a lot of consultations and other things are happening, but that network has to expand. Alone, no, none of the networks which are available. You have many private networks, but we have to see that how all these networks combine together and provide services to the masses. It cannot be left to single network. We have to see that how these networks converge, they have a complementary role to each other, how they the footprints of one network may not be there, the footprints of other networks are there. How we see that how this marriage between these networks happen and how we reach out to whole of the masses. We are thinking in that direction and see that how the things move forward.
So health being a state subject, so the coordination between the center and the states is paramount for it to be successful, I believe.
You see that during the pandemic, on every other day, the state and the center, they are in dialogue and seeing that how we take the things forward. This has brought the states and the center together, and it's both now both are working towards having the same goal. That means how to leverage on the resources which are available, how to leverage on the technology which is available, and how to see that the things happen in the interest of the common man.
All right, great. Mr. Bedi, what's your perspective on the subject? You need to be unmute, sir.
No, question is, I think beautifully explained by Dr. Saab. The whole this thing, I have been in this area for too long, when right in the beginning, from late 90s to earlier, till now. Questions, we thought in a slightly futuristic way. And I had I was part of Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. So in those days we had a R&D program. So telemedicine, I saw the relevance, because the patient normally, which all specialist activity was in the major cities, and whereas most of the population was in different centers all around. So for everything and anything, they had to come to major cities to get, that healthcare service. So those platforms, I thought, because we are going to have some major demand, so we got certain platform developed. And it is my pleasure to say Sanjeevani, which was a laptop type of this thing, desktop computer operator. That was also developed, and slowly, it evolved to mobile kind of e-Sanjeevani. And now where it is, you see, it is a wonderful this thing. But this remote service has become, very, very important. Telemedicine, what was hindering us? I think just now, for 20 years, we had been trying to make this consultation legalized as a legal consultation. It was, I say, is it fortunate or not fortunate? It was only pandemic when, this board of governors, they got really activated, Niti Aayog. And it was very interesting that Dr. V.K. Paul, their request coming to TSI. And when they finalized this practice guideline, our people had a great part in that, and the whole thing became legal. And there's certain things, when the different networks are coming, I will come when my major question comes, see how it has evolved. And then this pandemic has given a real boost. The TPGs are also one of those. I have seen, during my own this thing, because I got, whole family was down with this infection, COVID-19. But I could still consult my family doctor in a major hospital chain, because they had started this, adapted this consultation. And later on, you see, question is a laudable effort by Ministry of Health by using e-Sanjeevani in the hands of giving that tool to the people, from on the mobile, they are able to consult doctors, ordinary doctors as well as specialists. And there, the earlier question which you posed to Dr. Saab, each state has identified a panel of huge number of doctors who are the key persons who are giving consultation. So this is, and can you imagine? E-Sanjeevani OPD already, today I was talking to my CDA, old CDA colleagues who are managing this system. 37 lakh consultations have been done on this particular e-Sanjeevani platform. And imagine, Health Ministry then, under Ayushman Bharat scheme, they brought this to health and wellness centers. And the plan is by December 2020, all 1,55,000 of them will be covered under this telemedicine scheme and e-Sanjeevani, what we call AB WSC. And I will already it is operational, and it will be heartening to know. I was till today more than 31 lakh patient. Now this is a doctor to doctor consultation. Basically, the patient goes to a health and wellness center where there is a doctor, and they get in touch with the specialist to get this thing, consultation and his opinion. So it's interesting. Currently, we have used around 21,000 health and wellness centers, and these consultations which I'm talking about, 31 lakh. The 2,000 hubs. You see, this e-Sanjeevani AB HWC network is in a form of a spoke and hub. hub is the specialist center. So 2000 hub, that means specialist center, doctors based in those thousands, they have given this consultation to 20 lakh consultation they have given using this. And just to broaden and facilitate people, Health Ministry only last week launched another scheme, e-Sanjeevani OPD from common service centers. So there are more than 150,000 common service centers, which now are providing these common service centers each center is managed by a village level interviewer, and they help the villagers. These, because normally common service centers are based on the rural environment. So villagers go all their internet-based requirement, banking, education, and certificates and all that. They used to use that center. Now, this e-Sanjeevani OPD also operates from there. Villagers who are finding it difficult to do a consultation through e-Sanjeevani OPD, they have no problem. They will just go to these centers. That village level entrepreneur will generate the token and the registration and set up the dialogue between patient and the doc, and more, not only consultation. The more important thing is what medicines. Normally a e-prescription is developed under this e-Sanjeevani OPD. Now that village level
just need to stop you. That is a part of my next question. So I'll request you to just hold on over here. So this question carries to Dr. Patkar if he is online. Sir, can you share Nanavati Hospital's perspective on the leveraging of telemedicine if your hospital has done so?
So prior to COVID, we had teleconsultation services for about 21 towns in India and about 14 African countries. So we're doing about 1,200 consultations across this platform, which was supported by our hospital chain as well as Government of India, the African part. Post COVID, when the second wave came in, rather the first wave came in, our OPD consultations, which were 1,000 per day, dropped to about 50 per day on site. So we could very quickly leverage the existing platform to our patients, which is to come from local community to consultation. And from about 50 to 60 per day, our teleconsultations reached about 400 per day. So that was a big change. The chronic ailments like diabetes, hypertension, etc., could be treated online. So our endocrinologist, our spine specialist, our physiotherapist, our psychiatrist and psychologist were very happy and quickly adapted to this. Something that required on-site examination, of course, those patients had to come here, that flow dropped. Other thing that we very effectively used was teleradiology. So during COVID time, all of us are aware, we were doing almost 100, 150 HRCT of chest. And it was not possible for radiologists to be sitting inside the radiology room because the chance of you getting infected was very, very high. So we used this effectively for teleradiology services. Our emergency services like X-ray chest, we went to community with portable X-rays. We went to our A&E, the red A&E where suspected cases were coming, the X-rays were done by technologists. So all those could be effectively reported almost immediately. So our TAT was something like 5 to 10 minutes during the day and half an hour during the night. So we could effectively use this teleradiology platform as well. Also now for our international patients who come to us for oncology, spine or brain tumor services, once they get operated, follow-ups are done online. Pre-consultation of pre-surgery examinations are also done online. So tele-stethoscope we are using, tele-ECG we are using. So a lot of these are used quite effectively using teleconsultation.
All right, great. Mr. Subhajit, the question passes on to you. How is the IT industry planning to chip in, or they've already chipped in leveraging the reach out of this telemedicine?
No, I think everybody has spoken very pertinent points about how to scale this up. In my view, there were some good examples of the CSC being repurposed, which was covered earlier. The citizen service centers, which are in great numbers and at a ground, root level. Um One of the things which comes to my mind is, the applications that are being used today have to be much more intuitive. So just the way a smartphone is being used by any suburban or rural consumer, and he is able to, in spite of his level of knowledge or education, he or she is able to use it effectively to communicate or to transact, right? I think the same level of simplicity needs to come into these apps for wider adoption. One of the things which is very critical is, I think, the leveraging the vernacular language capability. So unless these applications are, available in any language of your choice. So let's say a fisherman in coastal Andhra Pradesh is able to use his own local language to communicate with the app and then with the doctor, and even if the doctor doesn't know that language, so there is real time transcription, of speech to text or text to speech that's happening, so that the engagement is seamless, because maybe the best expert is sitting in one of the cities, and this very rural user is sitting somewhere else where there is no access to quality healthcare, right? That's the simplicity that I think is going to really scale up the adoption of such platforms, and I think we're heading towards that in terms of technology.
Right. I think very, very well pointed out. So this takes me to the next question, directed towards Mr. Bedi. Sir, I would like you to keep it concise because I think we covered some part of it. What do you think is the scope of virtual or remote healthcare, and how does it affect personalized patient care? I would need your views, and then I would want Dr. Patkar also to share his views on it. Please unmute yourself, sir.
Oh,
Yeah, please.
as I had mentioned, you see, the remote consultation, because of our geographical distribution of the population, it was always relevant in Indian condition. So a number of ministries had come together to take initiative in this area, and my ministry, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, had also taken lead in this. You won't imagine, in a way back in 90s, when and moreover, my being, these are things where, we are very keen that only indigenous technologies should be used, so that we don't have to depend on foreign technology. And a number of organizations came forward, CDAX, Two Wings, and then some other. So we gave grant. I was in charge of medical electronics and telemedicine division of Ministry of IT. So, and the results were very overwhelming. The same platforms, etc., were used in so many networks. For example, I set up a teleoncology network in Kerala. And you won't imagine, the impact that small program, which what we did, we Regional Cancer Center at Trivandrum, we had linked with 6 peripheral centers. This was very heartening to me, that when after a year and a half, we took stock of the consultations and all that. Huge number of consultations had taken place. And only in 15% of the cases, patients, basically the first consultation was carried out at the hospital, and follow-up consultations, which were very, very regular in oncology. 85% patients were taken care at their place by this tele-oncology network. Only the oncologists at RCC only caught 15% patients per personal, and see the saving in the human misery, cost, and all kinds of travel of the patients. And we tried this kind of thing in so many other from West Bengal. We had set up a relevant this thing, for tropical diseases where we covered so many things. The issue was the doctors' reluctance to use the network. First of all, they were not very comfortable, so we had to arrange training again and again and again. But with this effort also came a major facilities like telemedicine and biomedical facility at Sanjay Gandhi. So a number of such networks started coming, and imagine we were trying with MCI, those Medical Council of India, to at least give a legal status. So unfortunately, there was a lot of reluctance. But suddenly, this pandemic came, and obviously, it was realized how important teleconsultation can be from the remote areas. People cannot travel because of lockdowns and so many, and the fear of getting infection. The doctors and the healthcare deliverer, they were prone to these things. So, and I'm very, very obliged to Niti Aayog and Board of Government that they really, took this initiative in so that this telemedicine practice guidelines came and the whole thing became legal. So, from there onwards, its remote consultation has picked up, and different state governments have come forward. Central government has made some human efforts, by using this, like I have just explained, e-Sanjeevani OPD. And then through in Ayushman Bharat, they promoted in a very big way using their health care and wellness centers. And imagine what we are talking about. 37 lakhs Sanjeevani consultations by patient to doctors and specialists, where the state government provided the doctor support. And doctor to doctor consultation where specialist advice was required through this Ayushman Bharat scheme, e-Sanjeevani AB, health and wellness centers. And this, currently, we have already used those 2,000 hospitals, especially hospital from 20,000 sub-centers, or what we call health and wellness centers, for providing 31 lakh consultations. So this is not a joke. It's a very practical healthcare delivery program which is running. So, and moreover, there are a lot of other issues. I find that when we take initiatives, a lot of things start happening. Anyway, this perhaps not part of this panel. The way long-term telemedicine, we started working in decades back, so results are so visible now. Certainly, it came to, but also these testing kits and kind of vaccines, etc., which India they planned, and as a plan of action, those things have come. But to cover more people, these common service centers are going to be utilized, where e-prescriptions will come. And my thing is, once we are using those e-Sanjeevani health and wellness centers, they have to have some rudimentary medical equipment which can integrate with the e-Sanjeevani platform, so that things like ECG, if a specialist wants to see ECG, that it can be connected and it should be operable with the e-Sanjeevani platform. And this will be true with blood glucose, blood pressure, and see, one very important area is mother and child care. It may require a fetal monitor. So industry has to come out with these. Already, I am part of another expert group of Ministry of Science and Technology under TIFI. They are trying, using NGOs and others, and coming out with a telemedicine small practical network where they are going to use these equipment, and the equipment which are compatible with the telemedicine platform, those only will be relevant in these things. Otherwise, DICOM images, X-ray, the patient have to go and get their MRIs done, and those reports will be sent by using digital images through, at the HV center, which can be observed and looked at by the specialist and give then they can be capable of So it is a wonderful thing, but this particular effort that diagnostic devices compatible with eSanjeevani platform, they should be developed and marketed with the very total this thing, confidence it will be, these are integrable with the eSanjeevani platform, so that they can directly be, and of course, because this is a rural kind of environment, if they are made more compact, it will be much more useful. So those are the guidelines, suggestions which I have particularly in mind, that to make the consultation more effective, especially from health and wellness centers under Ashwin, we must have those set of devices which can be integrated. And of course, I'm very happy that Ministry of Health has come for their eSanjeevani. They are now involving 1,55,000 common service center. So access to this consultation from remote will also become much easier for villagers who are not able to do this eSanjeevani consultation using their smartphone. Most of the people have smartphones which are not of that 4G category, maybe rudimentary, which will not work. So compatible smartphones, if now they are not there, then they can go to the nearest common service center and which not only do everything, but also give them e-prescription. See, and e-pharmacies, if they can somehow get involved in making available of those medicines to villagers, it will be a great step forward.
Right, sir.
One of my few of my
I'll take this forward, sir. I think there is an offshoot question to the point you made regarding compatible devices. So the question is to Dr. Patkar. Like he said, say a fetal examination for mother and child. Now, but we all are aware that that is regulated by PNDT Act and all these things. How do you see the future of, say, tele ultrasounds or tele echos or tele Dopplers coming forth? And this question will also be directed to Dr. K. Madan Gopal. What is the government's stand on it?
So I'll take it from where Vedi passed it on to me. Basically, telemedicine is here to stay. All of us know that. As far as teleradiology or tele-ultrasound is concerned, all of us know that across the world there is severe shortage of radiologists. The machine numbers are much more than number of radiologists. So if you see across the country, there are about 20,000 radiologists and there would be about 5 lakh ultrasound machines. The point I'm trying to make is we have level 1 kind of facility in terms of radiologists, but level 2, level 3 kind of people do not exist. For example, you have a surgeon, but you don't have a competent nurse or competent technician allowing them to use the tools. So below radiologists, nothing exists. So if we develop as a government of India, ultrasound technologists or technicians, or even train the nurses to do ultrasound and pass on the images in a JPEG or DICOM format to radiologists available, productivity of the country and machines will dramatically increase. If you see in B towns, C towns, radiologists have just started going. So they have moved from metros to B and C towns, but at taluka level or at village level, no radiologist exists. You have machines there owned by government, owned by smaller hospitals, nursing homes, etc. But there's no person doing it. Same thing is for cardiologists or echocardiologists. There is nobody to do echo. So if you train technicians to do echo, train technicians to do ultrasound, you have what is called as tele-ultrasound stethoscope. So you have a device which looks like a stethoscope and you can scan entire body using that. So you can replace stethoscope and do ultrasound of these areas, heart, abdomen, appendix, etc. And if you can make a clip and send it to a person who can read it, the level of competence as well as level of penetrability of use of ultrasound will grow manifold. All of us know that inventions are happening much faster than humans. AI is here to stay. So using artificial intelligence, machine learning, and also using optimally the ultrasound machines and ultrasonologists and ultrasound machines and echocardiologists, if you can do that, the care can go to village level. Thank you.
Great. Is Dr. K. Madan Gopal available? that's okay. I think you will.
Yes, no issues.
Sir, I just wanted the government regulatory standpoint on say.
I am not a person to speak on behalf of the government. Okay, that's one thing. Second thing, we should be very clear that what these telemedicine guidelines are and how we are going to implement that thing. You have posed a question about the devices and other things. It's too premature to talk about what policies and how the things will evolve. That I am not the authorized person to talk on that.
All right.
Okay, I can only talk what has been rolled out and what has been implemented and how the things will move in the coming years. Okay,
All
that's
right.
one thing. So you
Okay.
have posed a question about the use of devices and other things. As I mentioned in my opening statement, saying that we require to standardize the telemedicine practices. It's not that the telemedicine, whatever the way, if I consult it, I should have a standard of consultation for the telemedicine. That's one thing. So we have to focus on the standardization of the advisories and the consultations and the practices which are happening. The other set of things which we are grappling with the issue ki how to bring this telemedicine to our health and wellness centers. We are still not been able to bring that into the telemedicine network. Another thing. Second thing, during the COVID times, it has been proven that home-based care supported by an effective telemedicine consultation can give good results, provided there is a backup mechanism for referrals and other things. That model is there. The home-based care models, the Karnal model, the other models, it has come up. Now we are studying all this model and seeing that how effectively we can take it. Apart from that, if you look at the 104 services which were there in Andhra Pradesh and many of the states, they were a form of teleconsultation, tele-guidance to the patient that was existing. But it was supported by the 108 services so that in case of any need, the 108 services used to take them and take up to the nearest facility which was there. But we have to not limit ourselves to the government facility only. We have to see that how we take it and have a network with the private providers and others so that it becomes an effective mechanism for providing care. Because there is no replacement for the patient touch, because in the rural areas, people still want that the doctor should at least touch that patient. We can't forego that kind of touch. That is still there. Even in the hospital, even though you might have checked the patient, if you have not examined the patient is not satisfied. Even if you are taking 1,000 rupees, 2,000 rupees for consultation, if you have not touched the patient is not happy. That kind of sentiment is there in India as well as across the globe. So we have to forget that. We have to see that how the practice which is there is built into this technology. That's the challenge which we have to. If not the reverse. Yeah, I am having a technology, you practice it. No. We have to see that how we bring the practice into technology and make a win-win thing for everything. That's why the opening thing I told that we have opened a gate for this. And you might have flooded with so many platforms. The one company coming and saying that I'm having this platform, you use that platform, but where is the aggregator? Where is the specialization for this? I require some cardiologist to consult. The moment if I call a person, the person whom I'm talking is not qualified to give consultation, but they are all sitting there on the seats and they are providing consultation. We have to standardize all these things. That's where the future lies. If we are able to maintain the quality, then it is going to stay. If it is just a wishy-washy kind of thing, it will be another just you can say a call center kind of thing. That you have to see that how it doesn't fall into the trap of the call center and the BPO kind of operation. No, you have to see that for telemedicine is envisaged with a certain thing. eSanjeevani that has been rolled out, but it is exclusive for the public sector, public institution. It's not 24/7. That's the limitation which is having. That's why we want a network so that we can be able to provide services to the patient on a 24/7 basis. Another thing, here comes the role of the private providers, the equipments and other things. They have been, many people they have tried. The e-pharmacies have come up, the e-dispensing of the medicines are there. A part of it, that models are there, but they're all limited by the human interventions. You have to see that how these operational aspects are also dealt with. You look at the e-pharmacies and the e-dispensaries or e-surveillance centers in Andhra Pradesh, Telangana and other states. You might have come across this problem. We see that how we address this problem so that it becomes a very viable and other things. Unless it is supplemented by services. Suppose you say that I just diagnosed a beautiful case during our medical college days. We used to keep a stethoscope and say that what a beautiful diastolic murmur radiated towards this side. Then what? After diagnosed that the person is having mitral stenosis, then what things you are offering to that person? If the person you have identified some atrial fibrillation at the subcenter level, then what? What services you are providing? Unless that kind of backup mechanism is also built in, we are trying to build in that backup mechanism to health and wellness center by training and this, so that what can be done at that level, that should be done at that level, and what he is not able to do that, then immediately he should be referred to the higher center, to the either primary health center or the community health center or the nearby tied up the network private providers. Unless that kind of mechanism is built up, that would be a very detrimental factor for the uptake and the success of this telemedicine. Otherwise, it will be just I have made this stethoscope, I have made this gadget. The gadgets are all there to assist, but there has to be a provider to provide services. Sitting at a remote, you diagnose that person. I'm just citing an example of a eICU. You see the example of eICU. One big chain was having an eICU in the city of Chhattisgarh. The patient say that कि सर मेरे को वहीं से इलाज कराना तो वहीं से क्यों नहीं कराऊं आपके पास क्यों आया हूं? So where is the answer for that? How I can get confidence on the patient? It's not that they are all guinea pigs; they are human beings. If the person is in an ICU and I am taking the help of a remote place and that is not acceptable to the patient, we have to address that issue as well. We have to think in that direction whether that would be acceptable to that patient or not. It's not that technology will work; it will work, but how to build practice into technology, that's a challenge which we have to address. Over to you, please.
All right, I think very nicely summed up. The scope of services now, like you said, that even we went to eICU, but right, there are challenges. I think we all together have to put our heads together and find the way out so that everyone who deserves healthcare to the bottom receives it. That leads, I'm sure Mr. Subhajit would have taken note of the points shared by Dr. Madan Gopal. And that leads me to the next question to Mr. Subhajit Mazumdar. How can data-driven patient acquisition perform the future of healthcare? I think you can have a perspective on this, sir.
Yeah. So, this also goes back to your question on how the care can be personalized for patients, because I think what is happening through these telemedicine platforms today is a lot of data regarding the patients, whether it is demographic data, whether it is non-medical data, or whether it's medical data, that's getting captured in some form or the other. Whether it is data in the form of parameters, whether it's data in the form of images, different forms of data getting captured, right? And if you look at the overall vision for India under the NDHB, which is the National Digital Health Blueprint and the National Digital Health Mission that the government has come up with, basically it talks about creating a interoperable platform, right? So when you the layers which NHA is actually building as part of this is about making a unified EMR or a PHR layer. Okay, so Mr. Bedi talked about it, Dr. Madan talked about it. A lot of e-prescriptions, e-discharges, e-pharmacy, bills, etc., are getting captured. All of this kind of talks about who the customer is, who is the patient, right? What kind of care path did he go through? What kind of medication happened with him? What are the symptoms that he showed? And therefore, the next time that he comes to such a platform, the platform should be a little more intelligent to say, what to put him onto, because the entire history is there. And think of this, the way the government is actually envisaging, and that's, I think, the biggest scaled telemedicine platform that's going to, come up in the world. All these different telemedicine operators and their platforms are going to be interoperable, which means any patient who is on X platform today, and we've heard some names today, if that person does 5 consultations, and then chooses to pick up another platform because maybe there is a specialist that that patient wants to show, and he wants to go there, right? The moment he goes there through a e-consent, a consent manager concept which is there, his own PHR and EMR data would be available to the next platform seamlessly, which means the next platform can actually inherit the same amount of intelligence that the first platform had. And which means essentially what's happening is patients' data, vitals, any kind of, and today you are having a lot of IoMT devices that are going to come up, which is going to continuously monitor patients. All of that data is seamless and it is longitudinal in nature, which means over time, you can actually measure how is it moving. And once you have that, you can actually personalize your offerings and what you want to, in terms of, if you look at it from a marketing angle, you can obviously personalize your offerings much better. You can target much better what communication to send to whom, and therefore, you're going to get traction there, as well as the care can be personalized because what kind of medications work for him, what has been diagnosed earlier, etc. And what all this leads to at the end of the day for patient is outcomes. I think patient outcomes significantly improve because of such digitization over time. So I'll rest my view there. Happy to take more questions.
Very, very nicely summed up, Mr. Mazumdar. I think very pertinent points you made. I think the IT industry, the regulatory bodies, and the governing bodies like Telemedicine Society, I think they all need to put their brains together. The whole idea should be how can we make best use of it and reach it to the people who are, say, for the want of adequate healthcare, do not make it. So I think that should be putting that as the bottom line. I think all these key players should work in together. I think definitely there's a good way ahead. My question now for Dr. Deepak Patkar, it's a very specific question. I think, how can digital tools be leveraged to infuse more adaptability and agility to current healthcare marketing processes?
So digital tools are here to stay. A lot of us are already using them without knowing it. So something, as I said, like AI, following up the patient. So we have a database of about 60,000 patients. So what information to provide them, which is appropriate for them? For example, the patient is suffering from diabetes. So how to talk about retina, how to talk about kidneys, how to talk about heart is what we should know. Appropriate information going to appropriate person. If it's a spine patient, a lot of things about physiotherapy should go to him. If it's a heart patient, how to take care of his cholesterol, how to take care of his diabetes is very, very important. And this we have been doing for decades together, but with new tools coming in. So your bots, your AI, your machine learning, along with some intelligent IT people can really take it forward. Winston Churchill had once said that we should never waste a good crisis. So we had a crisis in the form of COVID last 1.5 years, and we should leverage it to our optimal utilization. If the pandemic has taught us anything, it's that we need to rethink our processes and plan accordingly. And maybe the need to completely revamp our infrastructure in a long run will take us forward. So optimal utilization of our limited resources is the way forward. We are doing it quite well. And I'm sure government is working on this quite humongously. The cost of medicine is going to go up as our life expectancy increases. So at the time of independence, the life expectancy was 45, 50 years. Now we talk about life expectancy of 75, 80 years. With increased life expectancy, all the disorders or diseases of old age, like dementia, diabetes, hypertension, all of them are going to crop up. Cancer is humongously increasing. So screening processes, you have to teach the patients how to do yearly mammogram, remind them, do colonoscopy, do liver sonography, look at PSA, do a pap smear. So all these things can be automated and reminders can be set using, again, machine learning or AI. So that's, according to me, is the way forward. Also, the newer technologies have to be pushed to the patients. So robotic surgeries, minimally invasive surgeries, neuronavigation, all these things, majority of the tertiary care institutions, including the government hospitals, will have. Now, how to use it optimally and improve the resources to the minimum. So you should not have 10 cyber knives in one city. Spread it across the country. Don't have 10 robots in one city. So spread your resources across the country is the way forward. And if we can optimize the patient care using all these new tools, we will take our country to the next level. Thank you.
I think, thank you for your input, sir. I think we've concluded on the time allotted for this panel discussion. So I think I thank everyone once again on behalf of ADMH and for being present and giving your pertinent views. I'm sure it will make a credible difference once the right voices are heard. If there are any questions from the public, we'll be happy to answer. If not, I think we can move on to the next discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
Very-
here, yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are.
Yeah, here coming to the end of the panel one discussion, I would like to say thank you so much to all of the panelists to join over here, which has been a great resource today. And it has been a very insightful and informative session today. So I'm very much thankful to Dr. K. Madan Gopal, sir. Thank you, sir. Mr. B.S. Bedi, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Shubhajit Mujamdar, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Mr. Deepak Patkar, sir. Thank you, sir. And so with this, let's move to the introduction of the panel 2 speakers. So I conclude that panel 1 is over. So let's move to the panel 2 speakers. Let us have the speakers introduction. In panel 2, we have with us Joy Chakraborty, sir. He's a CEO PD Hinduja Hospital, Mumbai. Welcome, sir. Mr.
Welcome, Dr.
Subhash, Mr. Subhas Vashisht, sir, Senior Advisor, Medical Electronics, AIMED. We welcome you, sir. Mr. Bharat Gera, Founder, Human-Centric Healthcare Ecosystem. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Dr. Anupam Karmakar, sir. He's the CEO and MD, SPF Hiramongi Navneet Hospital. Welcome, sir. So, yes, over to you, Jasanjit, sir.
Yeah. Please go back to the homepage. Yeah, thank you everyone for joining for an exciting session. Would want be hello. Will I'm audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Yeah, I welcome
You're
everyone on behalf of ADMH. We would be very excited to have your views on the topic, especially it is regards to marketing during these challenging times and various information technology tools available to leverage the patient outreach. I start with my question to Mr. Bharat Gera. Sir, can you tell me how can data be used to target customers with personalized engagement in the healthcare marketing scenario?
Yes, I was just listening to the previous conversation where Dr. Patkar and the other speakers were bringing this out in a very nice way as well. What we have seen happening in healthcare is now what is happening in other sectors until recently. And after the pandemic, what we've seen is the use of data has become very important in communicating or reaching out to the and engaging with the customers, right? So if you look at the data that is coming in, that's coming in at it's called the 4 V's: the velocity, the variety of data, the even we have to look at the veracity as well, and we have to look at the volume of data, right? So you get data in silos from different sources, and what one needs to be able to do is take that data from various sources and be able to, as Dr. Patkar was very nicely explaining it, that if it's a pregnant mother, send her information about the next scan that is needed. If it is a person who is diabetic, then you send them some information on diabetic retinopathy. So personalization of this information has to be done to communicate effectively and meaningfully and engage with the customers. And there are many tools available. I think as we go along, we'll talk more about it. Or if you want me to continue, I can speak a little bit about the tools that are.
Of course, of course.
Oh, okay. So there are various tools, and what happens in healthcare organizations is the tools are kind of in silos. So the marketing has its own set of data, and the clinical side has their own set of data, and finance and other functions have their own set of data as well, right? And what we need to do is we have to pull all this data into one repository. It's often called a data lake, and you pull the data into this data lake, which could be, a very sophisticated system, or it could be something simpler only for the, aspect of communication, like HubSpot. You pull the data there, and then you are able to, set up communication workflows, so to say. So, if then this, do this, if then this kind of approach that, if the person has not responded to your last email, then call him. These kind of tools leverage the data that is available in various silos and then makes it usable to effectively engage with the patient. And like I said, it also is dependent on the velocity. So nowadays, say, for example, a patient is in the hospital, then you need to communicate to that patient about getting the scan done in that 10-minute window, which is there between the time they step out of the consultation room and step out of the hospital premises. So it's in that short window, a trigger needs to come in from a system and alert the front office to go up to this person and say, sir, you need ma'am, you need an ultrasound. When should I schedule it for you? These kind of technologies are coming in place. There are several digital health players who are doing this. DocSpur, for one, is an example. So I can go on, but I'll stop here. Thank you.
No, I think I'll just add on this question to you. See, from the technology front provider, what are the challenges you face with regards to hospitals, adoption of these technologies?
Like I said, one of the biggest challenges is the silo nature of data, and especially worldwide, the locked up data within the electronic health record or electronic medical record, or as in India, we call it the hospital information system. That has been one of the biggest factors to be, been a hurdle in using data effectively. Siloed data, many times lying in Excel sheets all over the place, or in smaller systems within the organization. Difficult to form one view, but now there are tools like ETL tools, which allow all this data to be pulled into one repository and be used effectively. So I think the challenges with current technologies are helping overcome. One of the other problems has been that, especially in India, we have a lot of unstructured data. And unstructured data is usually more difficult to deal with. But like the previous speakers were saying, we have AI, we have NLP, so we are able to, effectively do something even with unstructured data today. So it's not as much as a challenge as it used to be, but yeah, it's still a problem. Yeah.
All right. Mr. Joy, would you like to share your inputs on the subject?
Your question, if I remember correctly at the beginning, what you have asked is, what is, are you going to introduce, or shall I?
I'll repeat the question for you.
Yeah. No, are you going to show the slide? Okay, you continue.
Okay, shall I repeat the question for you?
Yeah.
So my question was, how can data be used to target customers with personalized engagement in the healthcare marketing perspective?
Now, a very good pertinent question, and probably this is going to be the future for any healthcare provider, not only in the private but also in the public sector. to target, manage their patients with the help of the data. Now, what are the some of the, how it can help and what has to be done? I'll first start with some of the non-clinical areas. Today, when I have patients who are coming to my hospital, I am required to collect their, visit pattern, their diagnostics information, what they have, clinical information, and at the same time, I can tell you most of the hospitals are suffering from an issue that how do you retain your own patients? And in absence of these measures, very often a hospital, they lose out their patient to the other hospital or the other doctor. When you have data about regarding these patients, when you know when to reach out, it is going to be immensely helpful. Now, in a big way, this data is going to help us. When I say data, I also include the clinical information, what is available regarding the patient. We know with the emergence of lifestyle diseases, chronic diseases, the best thing to manage a disease condition lies on how do you handle and manage that patient better. If you have that patient related all data, you can create a pattern and you can, take a suitable step in future whenever you want. Similarly, you have a lot of these wearables, lot of these devices which are online. It gives the health data related data to the doctors or some of the decision makers for the patient, that when to act and when not to act. Next, it comes in terms of, now we spoke about the National Digital Health Mission and all. Under that, if you see a patient who is undergoing treatment in any care setup, they need to get continuum care of the similar level with the availability of data available from multiple providers. When you have that, it is going to help them in terms of reducing the cost burden for the treatment, and definitely it is going to help to take a quick decision. So this is the way the data is going to help, and that is going to be the future. And I have not touched upon something like, genome sequencing or personalized medicine, what do you call, if you really need to create, which is not yet very popular in country like ours, you can use the big data, the data of the individual patients, and you can create individualistic treatment protocol, personalized medicine. So I'll stop here and I'll come back to the next round.
Yeah, very well said, Mr. Joy. That leads me to the next question for Dr. Anupam Karmakar. Sir, are you online with us? Yeah, the question for Dr. Anupam is, what are some of the challenges faced by healthcare marketers in our country, and how do you overcome this challenge? So from the perspective of a promoter of a hospital, this question is directed towards you. Is he there?
Okay, fine. Anyways, good afternoon to the team, and good afternoon. Of course, my mentor is there, Joy sir. It's a privilege to be with you in the team as a speaker. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to see you. In fact, once again after the CII meeting. So of course there are I mean, say really intelligent people of the industry of the fraternity in the team. That's something very good, ADMH. Thank you for inviting me for this session. So coming to my question about the challenges faced by healthcare marketers in India and how can we overcome the challenges. So continuing the previous talk with, of course, with Bharat Gera sir and Joy sir, which is very apt. Like I would say, we require a proper data to basically go along during this time of pandemic, and when people are really very scared, people are really don't want to get out of their houses, and especially, I mean, say, things which is happening as well as kind of reaching to the hospitals. People have this perception that the hospitals must be a COVID hospital, there will be COVID patients, and then after not, they cannot, exactly come to show their own problems. If you saw some kind of data which is there also, which shows that there was a lot of maternal deaths during this kind of things. What had happened that time? It was very clear about that they couldn't reach the healthcare facility, and that was a problem. So, awareness, I would say, was the biggest challenge for all the marketing guys to go along to understand, to make the people aware that, look, I would say, we are safe, we are ready to take care of the community, as well as there are some telemedicines. But if you see the diverse population, I would say everybody didn't know about the telemedicines. Well, I would say it was not getting along with things. But yes, I would say that was the biggest challenge when the healthcare market is found very difficult. And data was the only substance which was left that they could go back to the patients who was there in their database, reaching them, and then afterwards, calling them back that, look, we are available, you can reach us in this manners. And that was the way it could be overcome. So the first thing when I came back from Rajasthan, to commission hospital over there, and then after I came back over here, and of course, it was the midst of the COVID, and then after I commissioned, helped in commissioning the BKC center, and then after I came over here, then I found that the hospital was already shut down for 3 months. And then I would say this geography was a little new for me. And I thought, what is the next step? I would say, it is just 5-6 patients. We have to run the hospital, the electric bills were piling, nothing would stop. How do we go? I immediately went back and tried to find out what is the database of it. Then I just deployed 5 people calling the older patients that, look, we are there and we are there for your help. Any problem you have, you can come here. So the patients were telling, oh, here you are open. Okay, your hospital is a non-COVID hospital. So you have this facility. So okay, fine. So this is how we overcome, and we have to see the minute nitty-gritties of what is there in the minds of the patients, what is there in the minds of the clients who wanted to come and show us. There is a lot of things, but because of this kind of pandemic situation, it all got passed up. But now they are coming up in limelight. They are coming. Yes, we have some problems. We need to show the doctor. We need to continue the treatment, and then it started. So that is how it is. It was overcome. Thank you.
Right. I think that's a very good perspective you share. Mr. Joy, do you have a perspective on this? The challenges faced by hospitals or specific like yours? Please unmute yourself, sir.
When I say challenges, I don't take it completely as a challenge. I take it as an opportunity.
Correct.
I am in the healthcare sector for last 23 years, and I have seen how each and every time these challenges have given us the opportunity to improve and go one step forward. So if I look at this data, if I look at this particular thing, of course, at the initial stage, there will be resistance from the users. There will be resistance from the team who is required to work towards this, because always we know that we are very comfortable whatever we are today, and we don't like to have any change. But sure, I'll take an example in before me, when my previous speaker, Mr. Bharat, was talking. At that time, he gave very quietly a name of Doxper. I'll take that example of Doxper. When we got it in our hospital close to 3 years back, the doctor can use that like a pen, and it captures all the information. It gets tagged as a part of the medical record, and you need not to take any extra effort or pain, but at the end of it, you have your records available in the digital format, and you can make use of that time to time. So initial days, we had this problem in terms of getting all the clinicians on board and getting it rolled out. But let me tell you today, that challenge we took, and we got them on our side after explaining what are the benefits you're going to get. Most of the time, all these remain challenge because we, as a change agent, we may fail to explain the list of benefits, what it entails. And when we did it, then slowly and steadily, most of my doctors, they started using it, and today they are very happy. And if it doesn't work for some time, then they get upset, worried, and then they come and talk about it. So that is, what is challenge, and that is something how we need to work out and ensure that it gets converted into as an opportunity.
Very well summed up. Mr. Subhash Vashist, welcome to the panel.
Yes. First of all, my apologies. There was a technical issue. My video was not, operating, but it's okay.
Right.
I'm listening all the speakers very well. Tell me, sir.
Yeah, I have a question directed towards you. The question says, how can predictive analytic tools be leveraged to understand the consumers and their needs?
Yeah, absolutely. I think at this point in time, if you see the total big data or the data which we are using, especially on predictions of diseases, predictions of consumers, predictions of actually, equipments, machinery, like we used for developing of medical devices based on customer inputs, customers actually interface, which we get it from the industries. I'm giving an example, especially whether it is a electronics health record or a patient, records or a real-time alerts. All these basis data which we are getting at this point in time, this gives us actually a sense of trending, and the trending we can actually analyze it and put in a data analytics. And that actually give us more insight about patients, about diseases, about solution, and that also help actually in upcoming medical device development programs, whether it is a CT, MR, whether it is actually any other imaging component that we are developing. In real great sense, actually, this data is really, really helping in a many ways, in my opinion, at this point in time. I think 5 major focus which I see on the data analysis. One is when we receive the data, that analyticals of data itself is give us actually more insight about what is right and what is wrong, what is the trending and all those things. The other thing is actually basis on what you call artificial intelligence or maybe machine learning. We get actually the different patterns where we studied and implement during the development of medical devices, development of equipment, development of healthcare solution from that standpoint of view. The other big benefit actually when we developed actually medical devices, we get actually real-time data actually from the market where we analyze it. Like take an example of if you're developing a CT, which is actually gone for an testing in the market, or maybe let's take an example of actually for a validation protocol. We involve doctors, technicians, and all those people. So that real-time data give us actually more insight that whether our development is going in the right direction, what we are actually putting in objective, or there is a change. So real-time data really helps industries to develop right kind of product. Let me actually give you more insight on this. Take an example of globally, industries actually is focusing in medical device because biggest business leader of biggest medical device industries in Europe and US, And at the same time, their R&D center or research center is also there. Now, the point is actually they are developing from their perspective, the data which they are getting. But like in India, the data is completely maybe different actually in the medical science. I'm not a doctor, but yes, we understand because in Europe, we develop a high-tech product and then we scale down to match the cost of it, low cost country. But if when we start studying low cost country data, there is a complete change in development program. We start developing healthcare product actually from the bottom line and upgrade those products actually on the upper side. So that kind of changes we see. Plus, other thing is a competitor analysis, because what is happening is that when we develop our product, there are different products available in the market. That data also help us not in point of view of a competition, but I think in point of view to do better and better, for each development. And I think that's how actually the healthcare is progressing. One of the biggest, actually, I think there are many doctors they can, I think maybe speak better. But let's take an example of the cardiology. Cardiology was the biggest problem in earlier times, actually, but I think in coming time that is changing, with the new technology. So I think other actually the way actually we manage industries on NPS, net promoting score, that is another insight we got it actually from the customers and how we utilize those data actually from an analytical point of view, development point of view of healthcare product. And I think this data is really, really helpful for the designer when we talk about actually, or maybe when we start thinking about the new product in healthcare. So there's a big actually role on data analytics. And I think, take an example of, I was reading through about the current study which we are doing. We start using, what do you call it, technology, to validate for the faster, approval process. So in many, many ways, actually, these data analytics, which can actually give us more insight and forward-looking predictions and, and detailing, which help us in taking decision at this point. And even FDA is looking for those data. And that's the reason I think development of vaccines faster within 1 year is one example of, analytical data in my opinion, at this point in time, where I think 2 years before nobody was actually even thinking that we can actually produce a vaccine in 1 year time, which takes about 5 to 7 years time, minimum. So I think data analytics, although there's always an element of risk a bit, but I think with a careful use, I think one of the best example is on this. Other thing, in my opinion, my understanding is on data analytics. I think although from a cancer disease standpoint, like I was an ex-Philips, and we know actually that how much money Philips is pumping and whole industries is pumping on cancer. But I think the hope is coming that maybe with the data analytics, we are able to get some solutions on cancer. So I think that's why I'm saying there's a long way to go, but I think we are seeing the good trend on those things, Yeah.
I think you give perfect examples of oncology and vaccines, how in the current future, current scenario and the coming future, we've been able to make the best use of it. Mr. Bharat Gera, do you have a standpoint on this subject?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. I can add a bit to what we just heard from Mr. Subhash. So when we're talking about marketing, it's basically three things, right? The message, which is your content, the timing of the message, right? And the channel you use to communicate, right? Now, how does predictive analytics help in this? With a company called BestDoc, which I've been involved with, they're using for hospitals, over about 100 or hospitals are working with, they're making very effective use of these three things. Now, if you're looking for communicating a message about a patient who's not come for their follow-up visit, right? So you need to send them a short and sweet message saying that you were due for a follow-up visit for your diabetic consultation. Please register yourself, right? Now that content, if it is sent in English only, the response rate is 3%. When you send it in a local language, it shoots up to 12 to 15%. So the language of the content is very important. Now, how do you discover this? By analytics. You should be able to predict what is the change in response if I was to send the content in a different language. Now, interestingly, if the message is sent at 9 a.m. in the morning, the response is different from the response when you get at 6 p.m. in the evening, right? So the timing can be predicted. If you watch over 5 million customers as this company does, 5 million consultations, you get a lot of patterns. You know what time to send that message. Now comes the channel part. Can you send it by SMS? Yes. Can you send it by WhatsApp? Yes. Now, what will be the response with SMS versus WhatsApp? There's a cost difference, so you need to know what will be the increased response, right? That's all these questions are very well answered by predictive analytics. But marketing in healthcare is not only about getting customers to buy your services. There are three things in marketing in healthcare: the engagement, the experience, and the empowerment of the customer, of the patient. That's why I prefer to call it human-centric. We have to take a consideration, like Subhash was speaking about vaccination. How do you convert somebody who is hesitant about vaccinations to be able to come and take the vaccination? Just providing them an ability to book doesn't work. But for somebody, it may be important to tell them where the free vaccination is available nearest their house, and also tell them in their community how many people have taken the vaccination. So we are talking here about human behavior. And human behavior, we know there are so many problems in healthcare which are related to human behavior, nothing to do with medicine or nothing to do with advancement in medical treatment. The same medicine, the adherence levels, if it goes up, if the patient is regularly taking the medicine, they're going to live 5 years more. But unfortunately, even that is not followed by a large number of patients, in spite of the reminders. So how do we communicate? Marketing, as I said, is not only about getting people to buy. It's about getting people to engage with you, because for a healthcare provider, unlike any other industry, lifetime value of the patient is a real thing. You are going to be engaging with the patient over the lifetime. So I think there are tremendous uses of predictive analytics. It is used very less in India, but when value-based care comes in and you say that I'm going to let you pay so much for the next 10 years to a corporate employer, you need a lot of predictive analytics to say what will work, what will not work, and to ensure behaviors which are healthier. So I think there's a lot of role for predictive analytics in the future.
I think very interestingly summed up, Mr. Bharat. I think it's a very nice way of presenting.
Thank you.
I have the next question for Mr. Joy Chakrabarty, and I would also want Dr. Anupam to answer after Mr. Joy. Sir, the question is the role of social media in healthcare marketing, and where do we draw the fine line from, say, promoting our services to soliciting patients, staying in the code of medical ethics, and then also promoting it through social media? I want your hospital administrator perspective on it, and also Dr. Anupam's perspective on it.
Very nice, pertinent question as on today's date. I always feel there is something called legality and there is something called ethics. Ethics is much above the legality. And there is a fine line between these two. If you look at many healthcare providers today, they comply the legal aspect of it. They may say, I am fulfilling the legal obligations, but I am doing this kind of marketing, whether this marketing is through social media or any tool. So, as a healthcare administrator, we have to be very careful before considering the message, the communication, what we are going to give. I'll give a couple of examples for making it very simple. I have come across, and I'm sure all of you have come across, the proposition like this from some of the hospitals. We provide the best clinical services in this specialty. When I get it as a common man, I get confused, and probably the hospital where Dr. Anupam is there, he is also going to put, I am providing the best possible clinical services in this particular clinical specialty. Then what happens? Both of us give this confusing message, and common people, they become completely perplexed that what to do. Because two of us cannot be the best. It is in English grammar called superlative degree. So there has to be only one. But if I put a message, I provide state of the art facility, I have this particular thing, I share some of the communication message which claims about my actual clinical outcomes, that becomes very pertinent, that becomes very important from the consumer point of view, because they are getting the right message. Now, my two lines of, I'll not say advice, but I'll say my viewpoint with my colleagues, those who are hospital administrators, that never ever get into the tussle or war with your so-called competitors through this kind of open-edged sword, because these patients, this community is no more you can take for granted, and burden with them with lot of information, whatever you want. In no time they'll also find out the fact, and when they find out the fact, please remember, their decision or their viewpoints may go against you. As a result of that, today social media is a very common thing. It is getting used left and right and center by both the sides. And I'll tell you the plight of the other side also, where hospitals are worried. A patient who comes to the hospital in no time, giving some sorts of, um, complaint which is getting proliferated across the social media and creating havoc for the hospital. So you need to know what is the right recipe, right prescription for you, and how you will use your social media. Don't use it just thinking that it is a tool in my hand and I can do anything. Do it responsibly, do it ethically, and do the right thing. Else, it may go very much against you.
Very, very, very aptly summed up, Mr. Joy. I think ethics is one thing which always stays relevant and has to given the prime importance. And this is where I think it's a learning for all other hospitals. They generally outsource the marketing department, especially the social media, to agencies. And just to prove a point, they might cross the line without the hospital actually having to know what is being done and where the line draws. I think very properly summed up, and I think it's a learning point for ADMH also. What is the actual perspective of the industry and how do we take it forward? Dr. Anupam, I would want your pertinent standpoint on this as well.
So I was very much second Joy sir about this. I would just add with ethics and of course with the legality, a person who is a hospital administrator, should understand this very, very clearly. What is the reality and the facts? Because there are a lot of hospitals, there are a lot of centers who are having excellence in clinical practices as well as good doctors. And of course, they have to work, whatever is there is very ethically, rightly what they can do exactly. Sometimes, kind of I wouldn't name them. Some centers, of course, write the best and they do R&D. And that is not right. In fact, see, I would tell all the hospital administrators that look, the patients are not always I would say unknown of the facts that what they are doing, but yes, they are very much kind of have gained the knowledge and then after they know about it. So you have to be quite, kind of seen and perfect in doing whatever you are giving to the community back. So of course, these two things are very, very essential to rule out in this scenario of healthcare. And of course, social media per se should be used very lightly. Yes, I would say very much that awareness is the biggest thing which is lacking in our country. And we have to use social media in such a way that it can reach to the different deepest pockets through and through the people so that, it can go. Make people aware of the problems, make people aware of that, where the solution can be got. And rather than, promoting, of course you need to promote, but, kind of I would rather use it for more of a kind of awareness tool in the social media. Exactly. Thank you.
I think very aptly said that we need to use it more of as an awareness tool rather than a patient generation tool. I think that is how we perceive it, and so be it if there is a patient generation from it. But the whole, I think, perspective should be that. I think very nicely said. Mr. Subhash Vashisht and Bharat Kira, do you have a point on this? From the provider perspective?
One
Yeah,
point I just mentioned. Sorry.
No, please go ahead.
Sorry, Bharat. You can go. Only one point I just want to make it actually. I think both the speaker, Mr. Anupam and Mr. Roy, have spoken very well. And I think from my point of view, social media, it is a trust building exercise in my opinion between consumer or a customer and actually providers. So the point is, as soon as it's keep building trust, there is a positivity around it. But suppose actually there is no real truth in their relationship, it hit badly. And that's the reason there is a borderline and there is a thin line that, as a social media analytics, we should be very, very sincere to analyze both positive and negative. And I think, we should use for trust building, which is a true relation building with the customers and consumers. And then it works fine in my opinion.
Mr. Bharat, say as a common man, if you were a patient on the other side, how would social media influence your decision making in say choosing a service or a hospital as a common man perspective?
Absolutely. I think there have been some cases where common people have made very wrong decisions, not just in this country. There have been documented cases of natural birth, which there are social media groups on various social media channels like Facebook, which propagate the use of natural birth among women, and sometimes it has led to disasters because the person needed intervention, and because of this social media peer pressure, never went to the hospital to get treated. So I will quote Khalil Gibran on this. he had a nice statement. I have a new invention. The devil came and said, I can use it to destroy the world. And the angel came and said, what a beautiful thing. I can create a whole new world. It is really, like everybody said, it is driven by values. And based on the values, the same thing will be used differently. But in today's world, there's absolutely, in a consumerized world, there is no going away from social media because the attention of the consumer or the patient is there. And we have to participate. And like everybody else said, we have to participate in a meaningful way and not to cut each other down. And that is why I insist on the word ecosystem, because if we increase the size of the cake, it is going to be bigger than trying to fight over the slice of the cake. If you take a simple thing like oncology, the number of people who do not go to the doctors at the right time is much bigger than the ones who go. The market actually is much bigger. So, like you rightly said, that awareness should be the objective. You put it very nicely, just that it is about creating awareness, following ethical principles, and we can use the social media very effectively to create the right kind of awareness and engagement. And like all the other speakers said, and Subhash said very rightly, it's about creating trust.
Absolutely rightly said. Social media, in fact, is a powerful tool, and the power lies in our hand whether we use it as a weapon or a tool. I think all responsible people need to use it very, very aptly. Very nicely put across, Mr. Gera. I have one open-ended question to everyone. I would want at least one input from everyone. The question is, what are some of the tech innovations in healthcare marketing? Yeah, what are some of the tech innovations in health marketing you will think that will open up economic opportunities for post-pandemic? Say you can name just one tech innovation which is going to make a difference to the world of healthcare marketing as a perspective. Okay, we can start with Mr. Joy.
I'll not call it as a innovation because it is already innovated, but I can tell its application. The first is definitely going to be, I'll take two.
All right.
First is your so-called teleconsultation, telemedicine. And the second will be application of artificial intelligence. These two things are going to take things much forward than where it is today.
All right. Dr. Anupam, what do you think, what innovation is going to make a difference?
Yeah, I to go ahead with Joyce, sir. In fact, so teleconferencing, telemedicine, artificial intelligence is something which is kind of which will boost all the economic opportunities which is there, and of course, I mean, say people will start understanding the importance of the IoTs as well as the artificial intelligence, that how it is important in the scenario in healthcare also. Thank you.
Mr. Subhash, what do you think? I think you will bring in.
Yeah, I think let me actually give my perspective from the industry's perspective as a hospital. One is actually remote diagnostic, even industries is working that how to, especially in radiology, how we really, make equipment which can be remotely, examined. So this is one another is, let me give you a great example. I was working on an MR coil project transfer from US to India. And because of the 2 years was a total project timeline, and we were not able to complete because of the lockdown. But we find innovative way to do the whole knowledge transfer and the project transfer, by actually remotely, So I think that was a great insight and learning that remote learning is going to be another coming a major thrust on this. And definitely, I think virtual event, we never actually imagined that we can, from last 2 years, we only is what happens in coming time. Events, I think virtual event is also effective looking at this time. The 3 points I just want to make it on. All the other point is already mentioned. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Bharat Gera.
Yeah, I'll mention one tool and one technology. One tool I see a great future for in improving engagement which is the interface between the provider and the patient, is the use of voice-based conversational AI. Basically, a bot which talks on behalf of the provider to the patient in an intelligent, powered by AI that has tremendous future because of the kind of scale that it can, address in very effectively. There have been triaging bots which have been used during the pandemic on such principles. And there's Visa, which is doing a very good job in this in mental health. So that is a tool. The technology which is emerging, which is going to have a tremendous impact in the next decade, is similar to Facebook, where you have a friend graph, right? Your network technology. You're basically the graph of relationships. I think what's going to emerge in the next decade is a health graph, where we will be able to relate how, for preventive care and for preventing the next pandemic, we need this kind of technology. How does an infectious disease spread? And for that, we need loads and loads of data. There are people collecting that data. For example, mobile companies have tremendous amount of data about where each person was, each mobile phone was. And those can be used tremendously in, along with health data, can be used very well in preventive care and in preventing a pandemic of the sort that happened, controlling and preventing a pandemic.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also believe the same. I think clinical decision support system is one thing which is there for a few years now. I think once it spreads across all the branches, I think even hospitals who do not have all the super specialties under one roof, I think that would be a great aid going forward. And I also firmly believe that technology is always there to stay. And hospitals do believe that if technology directly impacts the patient outcome, or reduces the cost of operations, then it is a very welcome technology, and the healthcare industry will be more than willing to welcome it into the fold. I think that's it from me. I sum up the whole event. I think anybody wants to add a point, most welcome, or we can proceed to the question and answers from the public.
Thank you.
Let's take the questions if there are any.
Yeah, Ved, you can take questions if any.
I guess we are not seeing any questions over here. There's
Yes.
a message which has been flashed over here. It's actually for the attendees. There is a feedback form which has been shared in the chat box. So once you fill this feedback form, you become eligible, of getting the certificate for this wonderful event over here. So in fact, let me congratulate you, Jashanjit ji. It has been a lovely moderation done by you, starting from the first panel to the second panel, and where you are moderating such an eminent speakers and the personalities from the healthcare industry. Is a huge responsibility lies to your shoulder to bring the best out of them in this 1 hour session. And so that is what you have done. It is extremely, I'm extremely, in fact, delighted. I have learned a lot from this session. And what I would like to say that reinventing healthcare marketing and in the digital age was the topic, the theme of this session from panel 1 to the panel 2. So innovations for post-pandemic era. we got to witness some of the very informative, interesting, and thought-provoking, deliberations from all you speakers over here. We learned about humanizing communication strategies in healthcare marketing. It was an absolute delight to hear this engaging and wonderful deliberation by you all distinguished speakers representing some leading institutions, departments, and organizations in the healthcare sector. You all are in a very top leadership role, having great responsibilities of delivery, of commitment and communication. And many people, as in listeners and viewers, and wherever this message goes, they are eyeing you, and they would like to replicate the same, in details, the ideas which you have shared in this forum. Your role in creating awareness, following ethical practices, especially in using the digital and social media tools, is really appreciated, sir. You all were and we all are actually very hopeful and experiencing that newest technology, newest tools and innovations will help the human race towards a growth and creating a strong healthcare framework and ecosystem. So thank you so much for joining in over here. Thank you so much, Mr. Joy Chakrabarty. Absolute delight to have you over here. Dr. Anupamji, thank you so much for coming in this forum. Mr. Bharat Gera, with your experience and expertise, you have actually enriched this session with your thoughts. Thank you so much, Gera, for joining. Mr. Subhash Vashist, sir, thank you so much for joining. We'll be having such more productive sessions coming in days, and we would like that association to continue with you all.
Sure.
And thank you all the listeners and the attendees over here for scheduling your time and trying to keep your precious time for this wonderful event. And just a message that please stay safe and stay and be positive, and please do take vaccines in this environment. It is very much advisable to each and every one of you. So stay tuned, everyone. Thank you so much. Namaste.